So you might not even be tired. Your brain just might be starving for minerals and nutrients. So you might as well check out the carnivore and the ketogenic diet, because those diets are so dense in microminerals and nutrients. They literally cut your cravings for anything else. And so like I have a craving for coffee right now because I'm like on a coffee abstaining journey, but my craving for sugar has diminished a lot. And in the first 2 weeks when I was jumping on and it was right before my cycle, I was really having cravings for sugar and just something sweet after I ate. But after some time period, the body adapts. It becomes adapted, and it's just a matter of like getting those nutrient stores up. Like once the body feels like it has everything that it needs, it's like I can sit in this peaceful little place and not be craving. And so a lot of people have trouble with their cravings and they don't really understand why. And you can read that book Brain Maker by Dr. David Perlmutter, because that book is the greatest about those gut bacteria in our gut that we keep feeding the processed foods and the sugars. They are the ones who stimulate our cravings because they have a short shelf life. They need to be fed. So in the book he talks about the gut and the brain axis. People who go through depression, anxiety, who have other mental health disorders, they have a certain populations of bacteria that are more, they're linked to insulin resistance, which all these disease states are linked to insulin resistance. So it's so fascinating when when you start to see your cravings as tiny microbes and just part of like cellular processes, instead of just thinking, oh, it's me, it's me and I have issues. It's like it's not about you. It's something deeper that's going on. It's all these little cells that we've been cultivating and feeding and giving them what they want so easily. So that builds into fatigue and why we feel tired and stuff. I used to take, me and my sister, we were talking about this because we used to take depression naps in the afternoon when I was in college. When I was at my worst, just eating, I just didn't even know. I had no idea what it was like to like. If you had told me, Rachel, go on a carnivore ketogenic diet when I was 19 years old, 20 years old, I would have been like, what? What is that? I was not in this mindset of knowing what health was and knowing that every single thing that I put in my mouth contributes or hurts or harms my body. And that's not to say I'm perfect now, because like, we don't need to be perfect to improve where we're at. But it's very helpful for me. The most helpful thing was to realize that there are bacteria and there are cells that are controlling these processes. And the reason I feel like I'm always, reaching for these really high carbohydrate, really processed foods is because my body is starving at the cellular level. Is my brain is starving. That was the biggest thing for me when I was learning about anxiety and depression and stuff. I was like, wait, all of these things, it just looks like the brain doesn't have enough of what it needs. You start to understand that these major organ centers, they have a higher energy capacity. So the brain uses 20 to 30% of the total body's energy. So if the brain is going to get what it needs. So how do you know the brain is essentially like starving you? And we could talk about dementia and Alzheimer's into this too. But we'll lose muscle mass fast, right? We start to gain weight because the body is starting to perceive that there's not many nutrients in the environment. And so the brain is going to take what it needs anyway. It's going to, reduce skeletal muscle mass. And it's just this perpetual process of being stuck in the fight or flight response. But when you look at the carnivore and ketogenic diets, what you're doing is you're saying, I am going to abundantly saturate my body and all my major organs, right? The liver, for instance, too, right? The liver is up there with nutrient density. People talk about like eating liver. Why are you eating liver? It's one of the most nutrient dense. It's so active. It processes everything, breaks down everything. And, it requires a lot of energy. Something to think about too, if you want to, if you're curious like me, want to go down the rabbit hole, is like looking up non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. When I had first learned about liver disease, I had only thought that um, it was mainly due to alcoholics, because I'm in South Louisiana, and around New Orleans, like, everybody drinks. We have an alcoholic culture, and I know that's in other places too, but I was starting to find out that, like, even diabetic complications, fatty non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. I was like, what is going on? These major organ centers are starving for minerals and nutrients. And when you understand what the mitochondria are, they need B vitamins. When you start to look at that, then you're looking at your food groups and you're saying, well, what are the most nutrient dense food groups available to me? It's definitely not going to be plant compounds, because plant compounds do not have a full, complete profile of the essential amino acids. And when we're eating animal-based proteins, we're also getting the fats, which you can actually die from only eating protein. I don't know if you know, it's called rabid starvation, but the fat is what keeps us alive. Like, and so it is really interesting to think back on history, and how we were told not to eat fat. And when you look at Alzheimer's dementia, low-fat diets linked to higher risk for Alzheimer's dementia. We can't avoid the fact that we need healthy fats in our diet, and it's really important to get out those unhealthy seed oils as much as we possibly can. But the body is so resilient, no matter what place and time that you find yourself in. I was at a really bad place a few years ago, and it's just, life, and there's always some reason to be, like, stressed about something, or and something's always going on to challenge us to grow. And so sometimes we get stuck in situations that really stress us out, because we either can't walk away, or we can't see that they're not serving us to the highest capacity. And so they end up, it's the same thing with food. If this food is not serving me to my highest capacity, then what is it doing once it gets in my body? What is this relationship that I'm continuing to hold with someone? If it's just draining and exhausting, then it's not good for my health. So and again, like, I'm talking about food and nutrition because that's, like, that's, for me, that's a really important topic to understand. But our relationships that we hold with other people are very, very important for our health. People are either helping us, they're either holding a safe space for us, or they aren't. And so it's really also important to evaluate how your metabolism is around other people. How do I feel after? Do I always leave this person's presence feeling stressed and angry and frustrated, or feeling misunderstood? Or do I feel safe to be myself? Do I feel like I'm fully seen and fully loved? Because, like, when you let go of things, it kind of feels like you are losing something. It feels like there's nothing there. But when you let go of what you don't need, just like in your diet, when you stop putting foods in that you don't need, the system, the body, it has more energy to take care of you, and to bring you into a place of strength, and connect you with other people who are more compatible with your biochemistry, because life is just biochemistry. We attract people into our space that are teaching us something about ourselves that we can't fully experience and understand, because we're kind of like the cell. The cell is kind of like, in the body, it kind of has a blindfold on, and it's like it's surveying the bloodstream, and it's like, it's surveying things in the cell. It's like, do we have enough energy? Is the sugar high? Is the sugar low? What's going on? Like, cortisol levels high, or testosterone levels high? Like, what kind of genes, what do I need to express? And so when you start to understand the cell that way, you start to understand that that scenario is the same thing as being around other humans. When I'm around someone who I really, really enjoy being around, I feel safe to be myself. My body, my internal landscape is like, am I safe to be myself? Am I safe to bring up this conversation? Am I safe to, do this? Or am I in fight or flight? That's what we feel when we can't be ourselves around other people versus when we can. So, and it's true that when you start to be yourself, people will not like you. That is also very true. But, people don't like themselves most of the time, and that's something important to understand too, is that you can't expect other people to like everything that you do when it's already so hard to love and understand ourselves just as we are. So just, you could take that mask off, take the mask off, be yourself, because it plays a huge role in your metabolism, in your biochemistry. And just because you lose certain people in certain relationships doesn't mean that there's like a billion other relationships waiting to like pour their cup into you. And I've experienced this. I've experienced letting go of friendships and things, and sometimes, yeah, it does feel like you're alone and unsupported, but you're just in this little middle space. You're in the waiting room, and you're waiting to have your biochemistry is resettling and reconfiguring. Those are the moments when you buckle down on your nutrition, when you buckle down on your exercise, when you strengthen your own self. So that way your chemistry becomes stronger and you attract things and people into your life who are a lot more coherent with you. It's so beautiful. Chemistry, life is chemistry, biology, biochemistry. It's so beautiful. I just am always in awe of it. But anyway, check out all those things I was talking about, carnivore and ketogenic diet. And you don't have to be perfect to just incorporate more animal-based proteins into your life already. You don't have to be super strict. There's a saying is don't trade the good for the perfect. Like exercise is better, even if it's not perfect, or to your understanding of what a perfect exercise would be like. Even if you go and you feel awful during the whole time, you're probably still doing something good. But anyway, I hope this video is helpful for you in some way. I love you so much. I wish you the best of luck, and I'll see you next time.